Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this very special event. We'll be starting in the next 5 minutes. May I request you to please take your seats? We'll be starting in the next 5 minutes. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon once again. May I please request you to take your seats? You can grab your tea and coffee to your seats itself. That's fine. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, once more, may I please request you to take your seats? We'll be starting now. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's my absolute honor and privilege to welcome you all to the Dr. Bala V. Balachandran Memorial Lecture, a tribute to a man whose vision and wisdom have left an indelible mark not only on Great Lakes, but also on the world of education, business, and leadership. This inaugural lecture is presented by Great Lakes as well as the Madras Management Association. Thank you all for being here this afternoon. Before we begin, I'd like to gently remind everyone to take a moment to ensure your phones are on silent. While I'm sure all of our WhatsApp notifications are riveting, it's nothing in comparison to what we're going to experience today. The event is not just a memorial, but a celebration of life extraordinarily lived. Professor Bala was a pioneer, a storyteller, a mentor, and to many, a father figure. His journey from the town of Pudukkottai to becoming a globally revered academic at Kellogg and a transformational leader in Indian management education is nothing short of legendary. As many of you know, he founded Great Lakes 20 years ago in 2004, an institution driven by his belief in innovation and excellence. For those of us fortunate enough to have known him, he wasn't just an academic. He was a fountain of optimism, laughter, and of course, endless stories, often punctuated with his infectious chuckle. We are grateful to Dr. Partha Mohanram, the John H. Watson Chair in Value Investing at the Joseph L. Rotman School of Management, University of Toronto, who will be delivering the first edition of this memorial lecture to a corporate audience. And thank you, sir, for delivering another lecture earlier this morning to our students as well. To begin today's proceedings, we are privileged to have with us Mr. Mohan Lakham Raju, Chairman of Great Lakes Institute of Management, joining us via Zoom to share his reflections on the extraordinary vision and legacy of Professor Bala. Mr. Mohan has been a key torchbearer of Professor Bala's vision, ensuring it continues to inspire and guide us all.
Am I audible?
Oh, audio. Audio has been muted.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep. Yes.
Okay. Good evening, everyone, or good afternoon. I am sorry that I couldn't do this in person, but it is my absolute pleasure and privilege to, first of all, welcome our esteemed speaker for this event, Dr. Partha Mohanram, and thank him for consenting to deliver the inaugural Dr. Balachandran Memorial Lecture. I also wish to extend my warm welcome to all of the participants, our distinguished industry guests, well-wishers, corporate partners, and everyone else who have joined us on this august occasion. And of course, my deep gratitude and remembrances to our founder, our founding chairman, my partner, mentor, guru, Dr. Bala himself. And the reason we are all here today and that Great Lakes is where it is today is because of a dream that he had a long time back to create a center of excellence in his Janmabhoomi. He had served his Karma Bhumi very well through the early stages and, of course, 40 years in Kellogg at Northwestern in Chicago. But, of course, he wanted to do something for his Janmabhoomi and set up a center of excellence. And that's how Great Lakes was born. And it's not just any kind of center of excellence. He wanted it to have global stature and global quality. And that's how was born our motto, Global Mindsets, Indian Roots. And I think I'm proud to say, and we can all agree that that vision has been more or less realized. Over this last 20 years, Great Lakes has established itself as a preeminent center of excellence in India, has achieved many feats as as the youngest business school to achieve those milestones. I'm sure some of you must be aware of it, and they may be spoken about, like getting international accreditations from the top US accreditation bodies, UK accreditation bodies, of course, the Indian accreditations, and several global and Indian rankings and all of those things, which I don't want to get into today. But I think that vision of his is well on its way to being realized. I met him in 2009. His brother was my professor at Stanford Business School, and we had an immediate meeting of minds because I wanted to do the same thing, which is to bring world-class education to India and make it available to all Indians. So having come together and working together, I had the privilege of working with him for over a decade and conceptualizing and implementing many of the initiatives at Great Lakes that have brought us to where we are today. It's not just what we've been able to realize and the bringing to fulfillment of his vision and dream that has been satisfying to me. It's also how we have done it. The values that we have followed in doing that, the values that he held very dear. You may have heard him speak in the past about whatever we do, doing it with passion, with compassion, building abilities with humility, achieving success with integrity, having mobility with nobility. You may have heard he's very good at having these pithy sayings. And values like those have been deeply ingrained into our culture at Great Lakes. We, as an institution and a team, have practiced those very intentionally. We have used all opportunities to communicate those and inculcate those in our students. And we will always do that. So it gives me a lot of joy and pride to know that we have realized, for the most part, his vision. Of course, it's a journey. It's never going to be over. We will strive towards excellence always, but also the way we have done it. Now, there are a few more parts to Dr. Bala's vision. He wanted to have Great Lakes impact in all four corners of India. Now we have another campus that we have set up, which is now 15 years old in Gurgaon in Delhi. But beyond that, while we don't have other physical campuses, through our online education, we have been able to bring high quality learning to all parts of India, to learners from all parts of India. And in doing so, we have realized yet another aspect of Dr. Bala's vision, which is to bring world-class education to people all around the country. And over the past now 10 years that we have been doing online programs, we have delivered high quality education to tens of thousands of learners beyond the tens of thousands of learners we have trained in the classroom. And we are just getting started. as far as that impact is concerned. Now, Dr. Bala was a dreamer. He always aimed big. Part of his vision was to actually take Indian value-centric education globally. So he spoke about having a Nalanda University in New York, a Takshashila in Texas, and a Pushpagiri in Pittsburgh. And those of you who have interacted with him in the past would have heard him say that. Now, of course, we've been thinking about international expansion, but in today's day and age, we wonder whether going and actually having campuses is the right way to do it. Now, let's cut Dr. Bala some slack because he dreamt all of this when the internet was not what it was today, or even before the internet. So, the way we will achieve his vision of international expansion and impact is by taking our programs global. That journey has already started, and I believe we have a long way to go in terms of achieving that as well. I think it is a matter of time before we will have students from all of those places that Dr. Bala talked about. It has been my joy and privilege to work with him, to lead Great Lakes together with him, and then to accept its leadership from him as his successor, and to continue the work that he envisaged, and to continue the impact that we will have both in Chennai, but also across the country, and then beyond the shores all over the world. His vision and values continue to inspire and motivate and guide me, as they do our entire team. I think we are fortunate to have those constantly guiding us, even today, as we take decisions, as we brainstorm, as we face various questions. We ask ourselves, what would Dr. Bala do? What would his view on this be? And actually take that into account. Not that everything that we have done always is exactly what he wanted. When we had differences of opinion, we shared those with each other. And to his credit, he always had a very nimble and agile mind. When presented with new information, he actually changed it and embraced. At a time in 2013 where academic institutions in India were resisting adopting and embracing technology, he actually considered it, overcame his apprehensions, and then embraced it. I think today, Great Lakes online programs are considered among the best in the country. Our analytics program has been ranked number one for many, many years in a row. I think we've built a tremendous amount of reputation for that. And now our programs in AI are developing similar reputation as well. So I think that spirit and his values will continue to guide us. And I look forward to seeing Great Lakes achieve great heights, guided by him, and through the efforts of our team, and with the blessings of all of you, our well-wishers, our corporate partners, and of course, the untiring efforts of our awesome team. I wish this lecture series great success, including the one today. I was fortunate to have heard Dr. Partha Mohanram speak earlier this morning, and it was a fantastic session. I'm pretty sure you are all in for a treat. So I wish you all a great deal of enjoyment and enlightenment from this session. Thank you all the best.
Thank you, sir, for those heartfelt words. Up next, we have a special audiovisual presentation that takes us through Professor Bala's incredible journey over the years, his values, and the lives he touched along the way. This is more than a biography, it is a window into the mind and heart of a man who believed in dreaming big and never giving up. Please cue the AV. What better way to honor Professor Bala's legacy than to continue the tradition of thoughtful disclosure? To introduce the inaugural Dr. Balachandran Memorial Lecture, I invite Mr. Gautam Lakham Raju, COO and member of the board at Great Lakes. He has worked closely with Professor Bala and brings a unique perspective on how his vision continues to shape our institution and beyond. So,
Good afternoon, everyone. At the onset, let me welcome all of you to the inaugural Dr. Balachandran Memorial Lecture. This lecture series has been in the making for the last couple of years. We lost Dr. Bala in 2021, and for many of us, it was a lot more than losing a valued colleague or our founder. For all of us who were at Great Lakes, and for many people outside of Great Lakes, it was a very, very personal loss. So first thing we did was to create a memorial for him on the campus, and that is something that helped us cherish his memory. And I think the campus was where his heart was. Even while he was in Chicago, he was always present in the campus with his thoughts. I think anyone who would send him a mail would always get a revert within an hour. Doesn't matter what the time zones were, right? AM, PM in India or US, right? So I think it was very fitting that we had a memorial for him on the campus. It came out beautifully. So some of you would have visited. I'd invite all of you to come to Great Lakes at some point and visit the memorial as well. But then Dr. Bala was a lot more than, campuses or institutions. And he was somebody who was about ideas, as we have seen some global leaders talk about him. He was about ideas. He was about people. He touched thousands and thousands of people with his warmth, with his intellect, with his motivational talks, right? And even 3 years after his passing away, I still meet people I'm meeting for the first time from very different parts of the country with very different backgrounds, people from arts, people from journalism, people from very, very different industrialists with different backgrounds, and even movie stars. And they would all had met Dr. Bala, and the moment they hear his name, there is a twinkle in their eyes, right? That's the kind of warmth he could generate in people, and people would remember for many years. One of the things that he dreamt of is to build a world-class institution in Chennai. He has contributed to many institutions, whether it's IIM Bangalore, MDI Gurgaon, and I'm an alum of that program that he helped start. And of course, ISB in Hyderabad, but Chennai was at his heart, right? It was always his endeavor to do something here. And while other places, there were larger institutions and a lot of support, in Chennai, he started solo, starting from scratch, the hard way, at the age of 67, when most people think of retirement. And he was not even fully here, right? He is a US citizen based out of Chicago. He had the audacity to start something here, right? Because he was so driven and passionate. And when people are so driven and passionate, things will happen, and they will happen successfully. And Great Lakes is a testimony to that. And he didn't want to set up just another institution. He wanted to have an institution which was globally benchmarked and where we could get the best of global thought leaders to come and share their perspectives with our students, right? Our motto at Great Lakes was Global Mindset, Indian Roots. That very much embodied Dr. Bala himself, that embodied what we did at Great Lakes, getting the best of faculty from around the world. Even when we were in a small rented building inside a pit, we could get the best of the faculty from around the world, right? And we thought it was a fitting tribute to capture his legacy to have this memorial lecture series where we again continue to build on his endeavor to get the best of the global minds come and share their thoughts with all our stakeholders, with our students, with our corporate partners, and help build in those global perspectives here in Chennai. So this being the inaugural edition, it's a very special one. And we are privileged to have Dr. Partha Mohanram to be the inaugural speaker here. And it's also fitting that he comes from the accounting area. Dr. Bala was an accounting professor, right? Of course, many of us who interacted with him know that, as good an accounting professor he was better at marketing, right? He was better at managing people, right? And I was a marketing person. We worked together very closely. In fact, when I met him, I was 28. He was, I think, around 74, and or 73, and we worked for a decade together. And he could just work at the same wavelength, right? Take to digital marketing, be completely comfortable with that, right? And of course, we had differences in opinion, but again, it's his greatness that he would talk to every single person around with his humility, right? Valuing them, respecting them. And I have seen that happening, right? Whether he is with the dons of the industry or talking to gardeners on the campus, right? In fact, he would take, I distinctly remember some photos of him taking rides on a scooter with some of our junior staff, right? So that's the greatness of that individual who, of course, built institutions, mentored students, but I think more importantly, touched so many hearts that he'll continue to have an enduring legacy. And I hope the memorial series helps us continue that passion of his of getting intellectual perspectives spread far and wide, and I request all of you to benefit from that this year, as well as continue to support this endeavor over the next many years. I would also like to thank the Madras Management Association for immediately partnering with us when we requested. And I think it's also, again, a testimony to Dr. Bala, who was a very integral part of the activities in the city in engaging the corporate world. So thank you everyone for joining us today, and hope all of you have a fantastic and insightful learning session today. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, as you all know, Great Lakes has partnered with the Madras Management Association to deliver this very special event to you. May I request Mr. K. Mahalingam, President of the Madras Management Association, to say a few words before we move on to introduce our inaugural speaker. Sir.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. It's a pleasure to do this. For me, it's a pleasure for multiple reasons. I have multiple personal connects with Great Lakes. One is the current Dean, Suresh Ramanathan, and I went to IIM Calcutta together. And as alumni from the IIM Calcutta alumni in Chennai, over the years, we have conducted many workshops at Great Lakes, and our experience with the students has been fabulous. So I'm really privileged, and it's my pleasure to say a few words before the formal session begins. First of all, thanks to Great Lakes for collaborating with the Madras Management Administration to do this. It's an honor for us, and for us at Madras Management Administration, Professor Bala Balachandran holds a very, very special place in our hearts for multiple reasons. For example, we have a new building in Madras Management Administration, and Dr. Bala Balachandran, who's a committee member, was involved deeply in the design of the building and how the rooms worked. So beyond the global vision that man had, he had a great eye for detail itself. So I'm president now, been part of the committee for 6-7 years, but that was much before. But people still talk about it. Group Captain Vijay Kumar, who worked closely with him, still talks about it. So it's really something. It makes me wonder if somebody with such global vision could actually have time for such detail. He actually told me that for every classroom which we had, you should have charging points close to every desk so that people don't step away for charging. That's the eye of detail he went to. I think it's truly an honor for us to introduce this lecture. Thank you, Great Lakes, for doing this with us. I'd like to thank Dr. Sudhakar Balachandran for collaborating, sir. I think it's your initiative. And when Group Captain Vijay Kumar mentioned it to me, I said, I don't think we could get a better opportunity to collaborate with the Management Institute in Chennai. Thank you again, sir. Little on MMA. We are started in 1956. We are on 68 years old. We have 8 chapters, 8,000 members. We have won the Best Local Management Association Award 14 years running up to 2023. So for us, we conduct around 750 programs a year. That's almost more than 2 programs a day, basically. Thanks a lot to the effort of Group Captain Vijay Kumar is here with us. When I looked up to read about Dr. Bala Balachandran, apart from what I know, I understand that I was wondering at Mr. Lakamraju mentioned that he came back at the age of 67. So he must have had India in his heart all the way, I guess, and it never went out of his heart, basically. I understand that he is the nephew of Satyamurthy. He was one of the greatest freedom fighters India ever saw from this part of the world, basically. And apparently, he opted for voluntary service in the army and was a captain in the army for 2 years during the India-China war. That takes a lot. So obviously, India was not only in his heart, but in his head as well. So I think at some point, he wanted to do something in India. And I think Great Lakes was that part of the dream coming true for him. So I really salute a person who just beyond his academics was Indian at heart, even though he lived in the US for a long, long time. I think you don't find people like that anymore here. That kind of, you might live any part of the world, but you're still an Indian heart. And to come back at 67 and do that is simply awe-inspiring, is what I will say. As for the topic of the day, Promise and Perils of Artificial Intelligence, I think Dr. Partha Mohanram, who's going to speak, he's going to shed a lot of light. As a layman, the way I've been observing it, it started with a lot of euphoria, it was almost the honeymoon period. And suddenly we're realizing the honeymoon, like most marriages, as it goes along, has its problems. Okay, so I think we're going through the post-honeymoon phase of AI right now. I think we're discovering issues on ethics, we're discovering issues on confidentiality and how it can be misused. But I, for one, as a layman, hope and believe that the positive outcomes will far outweigh the challenges and the perils. So looking forward to hearing Dr. Partha Mohanram on this. Thank you again, Great Lakes, for doing this with us. It's a real pleasure, Dr. Sudhakar Balachandran and my friend Suresh. Look forward to hearing from you. Thank you on behalf of MMA. Let's honor Dr. Bala's legacy by embracing his visionary spirit and commitment to excellence and love for our country. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, once again for your kind words. Ladies and gentlemen, the heart of today's event is the keynote address by Dr. Mohanram. The address on the promise and perils of AI promises to be a stimulating exploration of one of the most consequential topics of our time. Following the keynote, there will be a Q&A session that would be moderated by Dr. Sudhakar Balachandran. I encourage you to engage with questions. All of you would have received a kit just a few minutes ago. So in that kit, you have a notepad. Request you to write your questions through that notepad. And Ashar, can you just raise your hand? He will be collecting those questions from you. And we'll take as many as we have time for post the lecture. Now it's my pleasure to invite Dr. Sudhakar Balachandran, member of the board at Great Lakes, to deliver the welcome address and introduce our keynote speaker for the lecture. So,
thank you all for being here today. Thank you, Madras Management Association, for your gracious willingness to join us and be partners. And most importantly, thank you for the speed at which you thought about this and said, absolutely. It really meant so much to us as a family. And I know it always would mean so much to Dad. And he's there somewhere looking down on all of us and really excited about this event. When Gautam and I first started talking about trying to do something that would continue to keep Dad's spirit alive, we came up with this idea of doing a Bala Balachandran Memorial Lecture. And I got off of that phone call with a great deal of excitement and elation saying, this is great. This is exactly what Dad would have wanted. It's all about ideas. It's all about thinking about the big relevant issues of the day, finding those critical problems that need to be solved, and then having the courage to go after them and try to solve them. Then I sat down and said, holy crap, what have I gotten myself into? Because the problems of the day are big. And coming up and starting to say, okay, who can I think of that would be the person to kick this off, who's willing to take on challenges, who's willing to ask the tough questions, who's willing to apply keen, detail-oriented mind, who is willing to not miss a trick. At that point, the intuition was very clear that it had to be Partha Mohanram. Okay. This intuition was not formed instantaneously. It was formed over a 30-year relationship. Partha and I first met in 1995 at the Harvard Business School, where we were both in the doctoral program. He was a couple of years senior to me. From that time, we've formed a collaboration of intellectual curiosity, friendship, willingness to tackle issues and problems. Partha went on to be a faculty member at NYU upon graduation. I went on to be a faculty member at Columbia. They were right down the street from each other. We continued to work together and start thinking about ideas that we could work on. I was fortunate enough to have the opportunity to convince the folks at Columbia that we really should not let Partha stay at NYU and we should bring him to us. And so we had, again, the privilege of being colleagues at Columbia for 7 years together. And we've written 3 papers together. We've fought numerous wars on the tennis court. We've battled intellectually over the ideas in our papers. The paper comes out with sort of one fluid-looking thing. That's not the same as the process that went into making the paper. But it's through the mess of that process that you really get to know someone. And what I learned about Partha was that he wasn't willing to settle for good enough. He wanted it right. When we started thinking about a research question, it wasn't good enough that it was just something nobody had ever written a paper about. It had to be much more. The right paper was one that answers the question, why do we care? What are we going to do with it? What are we going to learn from it? Just because somebody else hasn't done it, Partha taught me this, doesn't mean it needs to be done. And he always had an eloquent and simple way of putting these ideas together. His eloquent way was to say, ice cream is delicious, and ketchup is wonderful, and no one has ever put ice cream and ketchup together, so why not put ice cream and ketchup together? You know, if you think about it, it's going to taste awful, right? So to work on something that matters is a passion of his. To work on something that matters was a passion of my father's. They share that in common. Neither of them wants to do something that doesn't make and leave a lasting impact. Okay. Prior to the work Dad did in India, he was an academic. He did research. He wrote his papers. He had co-authors, mentored PhD students, and then they mentored others and built a generation. Partha follows that same model. He's done excellent research. He is an outstanding researcher who's highly cited because of the relevance of his work. The practical value of his work is simply reflected in the fact that when portfolio managers start thinking about different methods to approach different types of stock picking questions, one of the key tools they all go to is the Mohanram G-score. You don't achieve these kinds of impacts intellectually without asking the big questions. But beyond just asking the big questions and doing the research, Partha has a big heart. He's taken in and mentored numerous PhD students who have now gone on to their own careers and started to mentor their own generation of students. As we go forward, I'm really continually excited by all the new things he's thinking about and working on. Okay, and I look forward to seeing them as we continue our friendship and as we go forward. When we talked about AI, both of us were struck by sort of a simple idea which is captured in a line in the Bhaja Govindam that says, Punarapi Jananam, Punarapi Maranam. When we were at Harvard, it was the peak of the dot-com bubble. And we saw article after article that said, forget everything you ever know about business. The world is going to change completely. The old paradigm doesn't hold. You know, actually, they even went on to say accounting is broken. It doesn't measure the value of this. Right? And billions and billions of dollars flowed into these things called dot-com companies. Companies that had nothing to do with anything on the internet, just tagged .com to their name because all of a sudden that meant a 10x valuation. Sound familiar? Right? That was the motivation behind this talk. That was the motivation behind this topic. Right? So I hope I've set the stage. It's my honor and pleasure to bring up, and I'll use these descriptors in no particular order, my classmate, my colleague, my co-author, my adversary on the tennis court, my favorite doubles partner, the person who makes sure that when we play, we do our best to never lose a single point, my brother, my family member, my friend, Dr. Partha Mohanram.
Yes, sir. Can you have the slides? So I have this mic, so I think I can walk around, right? I don't need to be at the podium. Okay. So. So while we are waiting to get started, let me just tell you about my own association with Professor Bala. So actually, the slides are here. So it's a tremendous honor to not only give the Bala Balachandran lecture, but to give the inaugural Bala Balachandran lecture. So all of you know Bala as this incredible academic and this institutional builder. I knew him first as Sid's dad, because Sid had joined the PhD program, and I remember meeting, and Sid's mom made masala dosas for us in your apartment in like Peabody Terrace and stuff, and Bala was there. This was early days of internet, so I couldn't just Google him and find out what he was about. Only later I realized what an amazingly accomplished academic he was in terms of his research eminence. He's an institutional builder, as you saw the video, right? Many great institutions bear his impact, like Kellogg, ISB, MDI, Great Lakes. I didn't know about IIM Bangalore. IIM Bangalore as well. Okay, an entire generation of Indian academics in the US owe a debt of gratitude to Bala. So it's a tremendous honor to me to give this lecture. The last thing I want to mention is if you knew Bala, Bala was incredibly helpful to everyone. It doesn't matter if you were the PM or whether you were a PA. He treated everybody with respect. I have this anecdote, if it's okay, I'll just talk a minute. So in 2004, I went to give a seminar at Kellogg, and Bala took me out for dinner to an Indian restaurant. And one person came and said, "Oh, Professor Bala, have you spoken?" He said, yeah, I've spoken. Don't worry, everything will be taken care of. And then I asked Bala, what was that about? He says, no, this guy's nephew wanted some word to be put in because he's applying for a residency at like Northwestern Medical School or something. And so I just put in some words so that he's very qualified, but I just want to make sure that he has a shot. And this was not a very, very senior person. This wasn't like a CEO. This was a person who was working as a maitre d' in an Indian restaurant, right? But Bala was giving that person importance, as he would if he got a call from all those eminent people you saw in that video, asking about their nephews and nieces, right? And that's the kind of person he was. So it's a tremendous honor to give this lecture. And where should I be pointing? Next slide. Okay. Okay, just a brief introduction about myself. I mean, I'll skip this because Sid has said plenty. I'm currently at the University of Toronto. I got my PhD from Harvard, MBA from IMA. I have some of my batchmates, seniors and juniors from IMA, a super senior from IMA who also happens to be my uncle in the crowd, Mr. TK Balaji. And so my primary area of research has been in valuation. I forgot to mention, I have a BTech in computer science from IIT Madras. I'll talk about that in a second. My primary area of research has been valuation with work in governance and disclosure, among other areas. I work at the intersection of finance, accounting, economics, and strategy. And I won a few awards for my research, but let's not talk about that. I primarily teach this course called Business Analysis and Valuation. And I'm the editor-in-chief of a journal called Contemporary Accounting Research, which is one of the FT 50 top journals in the world. All right, so let me talk about my journey in AI, how it's come full circle. So I did my BTech in computer science from IITM close by, graduated in 1990, and my undergraduate thesis was on neural networks for speech recognition. So this was like a long time ago, early days of the internet, early days of sort of neural networks, pre-internet actually. And I actually got into master's in computer science in AI, as it turns out, at places like Michigan and Sunny Buffalo, etc. But I also got into IIMs, and I decided to go to IMA instead. And so I went to Harvard for my PhD, where I met Sid. And my research experience over the years has coalesced around valuation, especially around the valuation of growth stocks. But recently, I have also started to use AI ML in my research. Okay, I have papers on how to use machine learning to forecast earnings. I have papers on how to analyze investor sentiment on Twitter using machine learning and so on. So the question to ask is, so AI ML, it was considered one of those science fiction things which never panned out. That was a general view about AI till around 3 or 4 years ago. Okay, why the sudden interest? AI has been in deep freeze for a number of years, or had been in deep freeze for a number of years, right? There was almost an unfulfilled science fiction aspect towards AI. But then things have changed in the past decade. Couple of things. You have the emergence of deep machine learning. Much of it was actually pioneered at the university I'm at by Professor Jeff Hinton and his group. And Jeff Hinton was honored with the Nobel Prize in physics, as it turns out, just a few months ago. There's also increasingly been a tight connection between industry and academia in the AI ML space. And there's been a strong ecosystem for creating and funding startups in AI, not just in the US. So for example, in Toronto, we set up something called the Creative Destruction Lab, focusing on science-related and increasingly AI ML-related startups. And this has been replicated at a number of universities across the world. And there's been tremendous success of companies associated with AI. So for example, NVIDIA, which is actually a chip maker, but they got into this GPUs, which have been the sort of backbone of the AI revolution, right? More importantly, there's been a business case for the widespread use of AI and the application of AI, right, functionally. So what is new? So, I mean, because all of those things were probably true like 30 years ago, at least in terms of potential, right? But there's been a dramatic increase in computing power, a dramatic increase in availability of data to train these models, okay? Emergence of deep machine learning. So there was this thing called the ImageNet visual recognition competition, where I think sometime in 2012 or 2013, a team, algorithm called AlexNet, which happens to be from University of Toronto, Jeff Hinton's group, it won this competition in 2012, and it's considered to be a watershed moment in this whole deep learning space. In addition to predictive AI, there's been recently the rise of generative AI. And so many applications have, in a sense, passed the Turing test. So Alan Turing, the famous computer scientist, had this test where if you keep a machine separate from a human being by a wall or in different rooms, if the human being cannot tell whether he or she is speaking with a machine or a human being, then you can say that this is true artificial intelligence. So many applications have passed so any of you who have used some of these, the latest versions of ChatGPT and so on and so forth, you will see that in many of these cases, the Turing test has been passed successfully. So you've seen the mainstreaming of AI applications through applications like ChatGPT, right? So here is a survey from, I think, Deloitte on what do companies, and we have a lot of people from industry here, most of you are leading organizations, what are the primary benefits to AI? So I'm not going to read this list, but you can see for yourself. It's like AI is going to help me do whatever I'm doing better. It's going to help me save money. It's going to help me get new markets. It's going to help me reduce costs, or whatever the case might be. So and there's also 2% who are just in it, but they say they don't know why. But okay, that's all right. But what I'm going to do now in the next 10 minutes or so is I'm just going to look at AI from a functional perspective. And I must mention one thing. I am not like a geek techie AI expert, even though, like I said, I did write C programming code for neural networks 35 years ago, whatever it was, right? But so I've done a bit of a deep dive in the last month or so, just trying to understand what does each of these functional areas, what do they benefit from AI? So suppose you're an accounting firm, or if you're somebody in the finance function, or if you're in marketing, you're in operations, you're in manufacturing, what is the AI proposition for each of these different functional areas? This list I'm going to go through right now, it's not exhaustive, but it'll be representative. And so for each of you who are in this area, in these respective areas, maybe you'll recognize many of these benefits. Maybe you're thinking along the same lines, or you may have some slightly different opinions as well. Either way, it's fine. Okay, so let's just, for example, start with manufacturing. After all, we are in Chennai, the Detroit of India. And so there's a lot of large manufacturing organizations here. So what's happening with AI in manufacturing? Firstly, AI is a tremendous predictive tool. So think about predictive maintenance to reduce downtime, demand forecasting, supply chain optimization, product design optimization for complex products. So just a small this thing. I think I will make the slides available through the Madras Management Association, so you don't have to take photographs of each slide. So the entire slides will be made available. Just contact either Great Lakes or the MMA. The slides will be made available. It's all public domains. Okay, so okay. A business partner profiling. So if you're trying to get into a relationship with some other company upstream or downstream, it's not just about the product, it's also about their financial viability and the continuation of their strategic alignment and so on and so forth. Root cause analysis. And you can also have, these are all predictive applications, but you can have direct applications. So this whole, I've been reading a little bit about this thing called additive manufacturing. Where you use AI ML to optimize the actual material application, real-time detection and correction of errors in 3D printing. And there's something called digital twinning, where in some sense, you create the digital counterpart of physical objects and you use AI ML to figure out any kinds of potential issues which can be there in the production process or even in the post-production utilization of whatever product or tool that you're making. So let's just move on. So in a sense, this relies on this thing called generative physical AI, which enables autonomous machines to perceive, understand, and perform complex action in the real physical world. So clearly, AI has the potential to transform manufacturing. So like this, I'm going to take you through 5 or 6 different functional areas before we get into some of the perils as well as issues related to the valuation of AI, which is where I think my expertise comes to bear. Okay, so now let's talk about AI ML in logistics, another area where AI is going to have a big role. Again, on the predictive side, things like route optimization. So you have things like Google, which uses AI ML for its ETA estimates, inventory management, document processing, shipping. All these things can be transformative. If you have better information and better prediction, you could really make a lot of savings through the prudent use of AI. The other big thing is autonomous transportation, both within and outside the warehouse. So one of my nephews is he did his undergrad in Purdue, and he's going to be working for a drone company which uses AI ML to figure out the routes and help companies do the last mile delivery in this space. Okay, McKinsey reports that AI-driven supply chains can cut costs by 15%, reduce inventory by 35%, and improve efficiency by 65%. So as you guys can see, these numbers are not chicken feed. These are really, really massive and can really impact the bottom line. Let's now talk about AI ML in marketing. So again, on the predictive side, customer experience, identify patterns and trends in real time to gain insights about customer experience, demand forecasting, pricing, task automation. But in marketing, generative AI can also and will also potentially play a very, very big role. Think about the amount of efforts you use for content creation for blogs, social media, email campaigns, or chatbots for customer interaction. Generative AI can be very transformative in this space. And AI can also help with better communication. So for example, I mean, all of us right now, you don't realize when you're using Grammarly, when you're writing a document, you're essentially using AI to improve your communication, right? So this is, again, I have an ex-McKinsey partner here in the crowd, 30 years in McKinsey, so I've borrowed freely from you guys. I hope that's okay, Ramesh, wherever you are, okay? Okay, so this is from a McKinsey report in 2021 on the future of supply chain. Digital and AI will enable end-to-end transparency and faster decision-making. So I'm not going to read this stuff, but you guys can see there is a tremendous opportunity in planning, procurement, logistics, production, marketing, and sales. These are all the areas where AI can be quite transformative. Let's now talk about AI ML and human resources. So recruitment, identifying the right candidates for a job when you get thousands of visas and resumes. Onboarding, streamlining the administrative tasks of onboarding a new team members. Performance management, identifying the KPIs which matter. Employee engagement, doing some things like sentiment analysis to gauge employee satisfaction. And the last thing is especially important. If AI is a tool to handle large amounts of data in an unstructured fashion to help you identify the key drivers of whatever your pain points are. One of the biggest pain points in organizations is retention or high rates of employee turnover. If you can use AI ML to identify these factors, you can work on reducing the turnover and increasing retention. AI ML and R&D. This has the potential to dramatically increase the efficiency and reduce the cost of R&D. For example, drug discovery, complex prototyping, complex simulations, prototyping, okay? So I'll give you an example here. There is a startup which was incubated in U of T called BenchSci. And so here's what these guys do is, if in the drug process, right, companies, in a sense, always reinvent the wheel. They're starting from scratch. But in reality, like what we do in academia is we don't start from first principles. We rely on the work of others and build on this. What this company has done is created this huge AI ML tool, which allows companies in their private space to build on existing public knowledge. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel, which dramatically increases the efficiency of the R&D process. So this is just a cut and paste from their website. It basically allows pharmaceutical companies to use public data with their private data and dramatically increase the efficiency of the R&D process. The next slide is both very important, and it's also a pain point for people like me and Sid, because we teach and train the future accountants who are staying away from the accounting profession because of the fear of AI, which is something I'll talk about in a minute. Okay, so no profession has been impacted as much as accounting and maybe law as among the other professions, right? AI can take over routine tasks, things like bookkeeping, document check and verification. And in addition, many tasks can be AI assisted. So for example, sampling and verification for audit, fraud and misconduct detection, research. So if you want to do research on taxes or research on legal assistance, there are the startups. I'll give you an example of a company called Blue Jay, another Canadian startup, or Even Up for Law. Okay, so here AI is used not necessarily to replace, but to augment and make more efficient. So AI will not necessarily replace accountants. Rather, accountants who know AI will replace accountants who don't know AI. And this is something similar. You can change the word accountant to lawyer, or you can change it to any other profession. This is going to be the big nature of the transformation we're going to see. So this is two examples. Blue Jay uses generative AI. So if you're a tax firm and you want some research on whatever the latest tax code is. So in this case, this person is asking, are employee stock options considered a taxable benefit? So this one will give you the answer and give you the different source of that. So rather than you wasting your time going and looking up something, it does it for you, and you have the whole breadth of information at the hands, on your keyboard. And Even Up does the same thing, but it does things like claims intelligence for companies in the legal space. Let's talk about finance. So in finance, AI/ML is extremely promising because its ability to handle a high volume of unstructured data, the ability to find non-linear relationships. What do I mean by that? If you think about modeling, most often we consider a prediction variable. I'm interested in stock returns, or I'm interested in earnings, or whatever the case might be, and I will throw 25 variables which I think are determinants, and we always think of it in terms of linear relationships. But in reality, that's not the way it is. It could be different in different subsets of the data. You could have non-linear relationships, right? So AI/ML is very good at handling these unstructured relationships, unstructured data. So you could use it for things like portfolio optimization, where you have these robo-advisors who are helping investors with their investment decisions, right? So you can use AI/ML to predict future fundamentals and stock returns. You can use it for fraud detection. So if you're a credit card company, you use AI/ML to figure out that I think this person, Partha, is in India, and I see a $2,000 transaction for a meal. I don't think that's right. So I'm going to just preemptively say no. So some AI/ML can be intelligent and know when to do this and when not to do this. Credit card transactions. Money laundering. So this is a bit of a cheap shot, but one of our large Canadian banks got caught in not actively, but inadvertently allowing money laundering transactions to take place because they were large deposits in cash, and many of them were essentially attempts to money launder for the drug industry and so on. And they faced like a massive multi-billion-dollar settlement from the SEC and the other financial regulations in the US. So maybe if they had better tools for detecting, this may not have happened. Okay. Banks making decisions for loan underwriting, any decision to make a loan, whether it's a commercial loan or real estate loan or whatever, is a trade-off between what we call a type 1 and a type 2 error. A type 1 error is the error where you gave a loan to somebody and you shouldn't have. So the loss is the loss of principal. But type 2 error is also possible where your standards are so high that you don't give loans to people you should have given loans to. So you have an opportunity cost of foregone profits, which you would have made on that loan, which you should have given. So loan underwriting can be improved with AI. Generative AI can be used for generating investment reports. And there are many companies which are actually doing this. Remember, more than 50% of the firms worldwide don't have any active analyst following. So they don't have somebody from Goldman Sachs or Morgan Stanley writing any investment pieces for them. AI can help with looking at or researching these less followed firms which have weaker information environment. We talk about government. And again, this is based, the examples I'll give you are based on the Canadian government, but you can use this in any context. Governments all over the world are overburdened and under-resourced. And the efficiencies which can be unleashed by AI/ML have the potential to be transformative. So for example, in Canada, the government has used AI for things like predicting the outcome of tax cases. So if you're a tax authority, if you audit too many cases, most of them are going to come back with like the person is going to supply all the documents and you're going to say, yeah, it's okay. And everything is going to be fine. And all you've done is you've wasted a lot of money and not received $1 for the exchequer. So if you can use AI to better predict which are the cases to go after, which are the ones you are not, that might be a smart thing to do. Similarly, when countries are being overburdened with visa applications, who are the ones who are the risk of overstaying, risk of like, not contributing to the economy or whatever, promoting diversity in hiring, predicting the outcome of tax, flagging anomalies in estate filings. And again, these kinds of finding some exceptions from the data is where AI is particularly good. So for example, the Canadian Food Inspection Agency uses AI/ML with image search, right? So from crowdsourced images, it identifies problematic issues and then goes after and cases. So let's talk about one example where this is sort of in both the public and private sector, AI in healthcare, right? Healthcare is another massively under-resourced and overstretched resources worldwide, right? AI/ML has the potential to transform the healthcare industry. We've already discussed the R&D aspect for pharmaceutical companies and stuff. But in the delivery of healthcare, AI can improve diagnosis, personalized treatment, streamline administration, improve patient support through like appropriate chat with chatbots and virtual assistants, providing support where like the human resource is not necessarily available. It can also help in healthcare innovation, like we talked about the R&D side, right? And now I'm moving into like personal space, how it can impact academia, and I'll discuss both the teaching and the research side. So in academia, AI has already transformed the research landscape. People have changed the way they do research. It's changed the way papers are written. And this is actually going to cause major problems for us, right? Because I cannot have a paper written by Balachandran, Mohanram, and ChatGPT. But in reality, many papers are written by Balachandran, Mohanram, and ChatGPT. So you cannot have a, not us, because anyway. So generative AI has the potential to become a phantom co-author. It's something that many journals are grappling with. So we actually have a disclosure statement where people have to explicitly say, how did you use AI, especially generative AI? And is any of the part of the paper written by AI, not by you? Okay. But AI/ML is also creating lots of avenues for research. So as a finance/accounting researcher, people are using AI to predict returns and predicting earnings and so on and so forth. But one of the biggest problems with AI, which is going to be a big issue in research, is In research, so in the real world, right, you want stuff that works. You don't care as much about why it works. You just want stuff that works, right? But we academics care about why something works. So one of the biggest problems in AI is things are black box. So if something works, you can't just be happy and run with it because it might not work tomorrow or it might not work 5 years from now. So this black box issue is going to be a big problem in academia. Less confidence that something which works is going to work in the future as well. Okay, now I'm going to talk about AI ML in the classroom, something I was discussing with some of the Great Lakes faculty earlier today as well. So it has changed the pedagogy of teaching completely. Teachers have to learn how to adapt, or how to adapt rather, sorry. Firstly, you can use AI as a tool, like, so you can have like AI assisted tutoring. But one thing you have to think about is how much AI are students using in assignments? Can you outlaw the use of AI in assignments? The one issue is, if you think about the use of AI by students in deliverables, whether it's be a homework assignment or even the exam, where you may have, if people are doing stuff on their laptop, as we frequently are, it's going to be incredibly difficult to like outlaw the use of internet, which means outlawing the use of AI in real time. So what are you evaluating students on? Are you evaluating them on how well they know the subject matter or how well they know how to use AI? So that becomes an issue, right? So there are some tools to detect the use of AI, like detect the use of ChatGPT, but those tools aren't very good, right? So essentially what you need to do is you need to increase the judgment-based aspect of your deliverable. Because like I said, AI still lags a little bit on the judgment aspect. It's incredibly good on the analysis, incredibly good on the predictive aspect. On the judgment aspect, you can easily detect the AI-related written exam or the real exam. So that's what you need to do. So let's talk. I'll just give you one case study, particularly relevant because we are in Chennai right now. By the way, the word Chennai ends with AI. Okay, Chen AI. Just think about that. Okay, so you guys are in a very, very good place here. Okay, all right. So in the mid 1990s, Garry Kasparov lost to Big Blue, this supercomputer set up by IBM, right? And everybody said that this is the end of chess. In fact, Kasparov jokes that he's the first guy to lose his job to AI. Okay, but instead, chess has never been more popular. What AI has done is it has democratized the learning of chess. Earlier on, if you wanted to become a super chess grandmaster, you needed to be personally trained by somebody from the Russian school or whatever it is. I mean, you'd always have some exceptions like Vishwanathan Anand and stuff, but most people were part of some sort of Gurukul lineage of like this person is Botvinnik student and this person is Mikhail Tal student or whatever the case might be. But now everybody has the access. They have the access to machines which analyze every game ever played, right? You don't need to be personally tutored by a grandmaster, okay? And so just look at the amazing success of Velamal Vidyalaya with Gukesh, Prag, and Vaishali and all these things. I will argue that if not for AI, these people wouldn't be where they are right now. At a young age, yeah, the world champion at the age of 18. All right. Also, machines have changed the way humans play chess. And this is somebody who can lose to any person in 4 moves. I'm not exactly, as my uncle will attest, I'm not a very good chess player. But anyway, I still watch those games without having a clue. See, me watching those chess games is like watching a bunch of physicists solving Fourier transforms. I did it anyway, but it was fun, mainly because an Indian was involved. So now let's flip and talk about the perils of AI ML. And I'm going to list them on a single slide, and I'm going to focus on just a couple of them. But I'll just briefly talk about each of them. Okay? So we've talked about all the wonderful things that AI ML can do, will do, and is doing. But obviously, there's no free lunch. There are some downsides, right? What are they? So one is job displacement, something that I will talk a little bit more about. Fear of bias and discrimination. Many people say that AI, for example, is fed whatever it's trained on. So there's been evidence which shows that these AI algorithm sorted resumes systematically discriminate against minority applicants, systematically discriminate against women. And it's not that the AI wants to be biased, it's just that it's based on what it's been trained on. Okay? Privacy concerns. remember, whenever you get something for free, you are the product, right? So all of us are getting stuff for free on Facebook and getting stuff for free on Twitter, but Twitter is getting us, and or Facebook is getting us, and we are the training algorithm, or everything we do is part of the training database, right? So that's a real concern in the case of AI. Lack of accountability, right? Can you sue AI? Like, especially if AI is making decisions, right? And somebody says, no, it's not me, it's the algorithm. You really can't sue the algorithm. You can't go and sue Jeff Hinton because he was the guy behind the deep machine learning algorithm or whatever, right? So people in the US like to point at stuff and sue people. It's going to be a little more difficult with AI, okay? Maybe that's a good thing. Ethical concerns. I mean, there's so many ethical concerns in AI. So, but imagine if you use AI to improve the targeting of drones used in warfare. And you are some computer science professor sitting in Toronto or sitting in Carnegie Mellon, just trying to improve algorithms, and this is what your algorithms end up being used for. It's something you need to think about. You can't ignore it. Environmental impact, and this is massive. We discussed this in the morning as well. AI, initially when blockchain came out, and when this Bitcoin came out, people are talking about how bad it is for the environment. AI is going to blow all of this out of the water. The amount of power required, these are incredibly power-hungry machines. And because each time the training sets are growing exponentially, the amount of data analysis involved is just extremely power-hungry. So that's something that people need to figure out. Maybe co-locate the servers in areas where you have renewable energy in real time, and it's something which needs to be done. It's not something which can be ignored. Okay? Lack of transparency. This is one of the things, if you remember, Sam Altman was fired from OpenAI, and then he came back a week later. And Jeff Hinton, who won the Nobel Prize, he's one of the people who quit Google because he was concerned that the companies are not taking all these fears of AI seriously. And he actually applauded the firing of Sam Altman because he felt he's one of the guys who is not, he's focused much more on the business case for AI and less on the risk of AI. AI is going to deepen the digital divide, because the digital divide right now is between people who have access to computers and people who don't have access to computers. But it's going to be the people who know AI, or people who can afford have the wherewithal to have a paid version of ChatGPT versus the one who cannot, and so on and so forth. It's going to make these things much more difficult. And of course, there's this massive, people talk about futuristic AI extinction risk. There is a 0.1% probability that in the next 50 years, it'll be like a matrix situation. That's something, honestly, I'm not an expert at. So I will leave the futurists to worry about that one. But let's talk about a couple of things. Job displacement, and the risk that AI is not everything it's made out to be. The risk that AI is going to be all hype and won't live up to the hype. So job displacement, right? Will AI make a huge swathe of human beings obsolete? Or will AI help workers be much more productive? The answer is probably a bit of both. So there's I went through the research and I found two papers published in Science. Science is one of the highest cited academic journals. And one of them is experimental evidence of the productivity effects of generative AI. GPTs are GPTs, labor market impacts of LLMs. So the first one, just focus on the part I have underlined, okay? Participants with weaker skills benefited more from ChatGPT, which carries policy implications for efforts to reduce the productivity inequality through AI. So if AI can help the weaker people in the workforce become more productive, that can only be good. On the other hand, evidence suggests that we estimate that roughly 1.8% of jobs could have over half their tasks affected by LLMs. When accounting for current and likely future developments, this share jumps to 46% of jobs. I think all of us can live with 1.8% of jobs becoming obsolete because of AI. But if 46% of jobs become obsolete because of AI, that's something we need to think about as a society. Okay, the effects can be pretty dramatic. So the impact of AI fear on the job market is actually pretty stark. I'll give you two examples. One in accounting. I'm a professor of accounting. All universities in the US and Canada have seen massive decline in enrollments for accounting in the undergraduate programs. And one of the biggest fears is our jobs are being displaced by AI. I don't want to join an accounting firm because they're going to lay me off because they're going to find AI to do my job. And we have tried to respond by increasing AI, ML, and data analytics into the classroom. And the big four are complaining about labor shortages, saying that we can't hire the number of accountants we need to hire. Similarly, in medicine, right? Jeff Hinton predicted in 2016 that radiologists will become obsolete within 5 to 10 years. Guess what? And because AI ML is going to become so good at doing this, guess what happened? It has not. It has not become as good. It has not replaced doctors. However, now there's a massive shortage of radiologists. Why? Because people in the medical school said, oh, I don't want to do radiology. So there's a massive shortage of radiologists because nobody went into radiology. So it's kind of strange. It's almost like a paradox. Let's talk about the second fear. What if AI is just hype? What if AI fails to live up to its promise? Everybody is investing in AI, by the way. Is it wisdom of the crowds or is it fool's rush in? Whenever you see everybody going somewhere, it's one of two explanations. That it's a really smart thing, so let's do it. Or why did you go there? I went there because everybody else was going there and I also went. Okay, this is an element of FOMO, fear of missing out. I better be in AI because everybody else is in AI. I have no reason why I'm in AI, but I need to be there. Okay, so here are some reasons why AI might fail. I'm not talking about the risks of AI. I'm talking about the risks why AI might fail to live up to its potential. Okay, one of them is overpromise and underdeliver. Biggest example thus far has been autonomous transportation. Okay, autonomous transportation doesn't do great in California. I shudder to think how it's going to do in Chennai, let alone Bangalore. Like, you know, with the roads and the construction and so on and so forth, the auto rickshaws and the occasional cows and so on and so forth. It's going to be a challenge. Okay. AI can help prediction, but AI cannot replace judgment. I mean, there's a limit to how much you can program judgment. Okay. To use a phrase made popular by Donald Rumsfeld, right? There's known unknowns, there's known knowns, known unknowns, unknown knowns, like your superpower you didn't know you had, but there's unknown unknowns. Like, so if it has not even entered the realm of your thinking, so remember, AI does what it's programmed to do. It cannot handle situations which it has no idea about, even in a sort of deep machine learning world we might be in. Okay. And it could simply be that the reason why it might fail is because it should never have been used in the first place. Okay. And finally, the last thing is the data might be really poor. You've all heard of LIFO and FIFO for those of you with accountants. GIGO is another word you should be familiar with. Garbage in, garbage out. If the quality of your inputs are bad, no matter how much lipstick you put on that pig, the output is going to be bad. Okay. And the last thing is people underestimate how complex AI implementation is in practice. So the Gartner group, right, has this thing called the hype cycle, where they try to, they say whenever you have any new emerging technology, you go through these 4 or 5 phases. You have the innovation phase, and then you get this thing called peak of inflated expectation, the trough of disappointment, and eventually you kind of get back to this thing called the plateau of productivity. So in some sense, AI is probably somewhere, should go back. AI is somewhere at the peak of inflated expectations coming into the trough of disappointment. Of course, different kinds of AI are in different parts of this. Of course, it doesn't mean to say that AI will be a flop. Some aspects of AI are eventually going to get into the steady state where they will just become part of our life, but some of these things are going to fall by the wayside. So let's take Sid briefly discussed this in his introduction. Let's take the analogy with the internet or the tech boom, okay? So in 1995, Netscape had its IPO, which is considered to be the start of the internet boom. And after that, the NASDAQ went absolutely bonkers. Till around March of 2000, the NASDAQ increased from, and you had a major boom in IPO of tech stocks. And the NASDAQ was like, okay, one other thing is people started talking about new paradigm. This time it's different. Like, so for example, all of us who studied like finance in the 70s, 80s, and 90s or whatever, early 90s, used to talk about price to book ratio and price to earnings ratio. But what happens if you have a loss-making firm? You can't use a price to earnings ratio, so you move up the income statement and you say, okay, I'm going to use price to sales ratio. What happens if you don't have sales? Well, then you start looking at web activity. So you had in the tech boom, right? People were valuing firms based on, I don't have any sales, but 1,000 people clicked on my website yesterday. So they were valuing firms based on web activity, right? And they would use words like new paradigm. So I'll tell you one thing about new paradigm. New paradigms are great, but please don't forget the old paradigm. Okay, so to give you an analogy, right? Okay, Einstein introduced the world to Einsteinian physics, which in a sense was a repudiation of Newtonian physics. Okay, so you cannot, so suppose you visit my fair town of Toronto and you go on top of the CN Tower, you can't jump out of the CN Tower saying that I believe in Einsteinian physics. This Newtonian physics and gravity and all aren't concepts. It's going to end with a splat. Okay, which is probably what's going to happen with the valuation of many companies. It certainly had, that's what happened with many of the companies in the tech boom. It could happen in the AI space as well. So here there was major M&A activity, like at AOL Time Warner, $300 billion. And from 1800 in 1998 March, the NASDAQ rose to 5,000 in March of 2000. So like tripling in 2 years. But it collapsed to 1800 in 2001 March and went even lower before starting to rise again. So the thing is, in that space, there were lots of companies which fell by the wayside. Companies like drcoop.com, which was in the healthcare space, pets.com, but there was also an amazon.com. And in the next generation, probably a Google and so on and so forth. So the question to ask is there a bubble in AI stock valuation? Okay, so here are some quotations I found. This is from somebody who works for a macro firm. AI still remains completely unproven, and fake it till you make it might work in Silicon Valley, but for the rest of us, I think once bitten, twice shy is the more appropriate analogy. Okay. This is what precisely happened to the internet in 1999, autonomous driving in 2017, and now generative AI in 2024. I think this will be the biggest bubble of all time, the .ai bubble, and it hasn't even started yet. So these are just three people who are extremely bearish. By the way, I'm not saying I agree with them. I'm just presenting a certain viewpoint here. Okay. So I'm going to now switch gears and talk a little bit about my research, not in the AI space, but how it can be applied to the AI space. Sid, how much more time do I have? 10 more minutes? Take my time. Wonderful. Okay. Okay. 10 minutes is good? Okay, 10 minutes is perfect. Okay. Can one separate out winners from losers among early stage tech firms? Okay. So I'm going to, this has been one of the lines of my research. So my first paper way back in 2002 was on how to value tech IPOs. This was during the .com, immediate post .com phase, okay? The valuation of internet stocks. And 2005, I published a now what has turned out to be a very influential paper on how to apply the principle of value investing to growth stocks. Okay, this is the paper I published in 2005, separating winners from losers among low book to market stocks using financial statement analysis. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this strategy, but more importantly, I'll talk about how you might potentially think about applying the strategy in the AI space. Okay, so let me give you a brief introduction to this G-score strategy. Using financial statement analysis, I created an index called G-score to evaluate growth firms. Okay, so I was looking at growth firms. These are firms with high PE ratios and high price to book ratios. And I had three kinds of signals. The first signal was, are you profitable? I mean, what's your ROA like? What's your cash flows like? The standard financial analysis, but this was a very small part of my of this G-score. The second part is I looked at stability and variability of growth and profitability. And the logic here is when you have growth firms and you have two firms which have both done very well, but one has a track record of doing well consistently, the other one has an extremely variable past performance, you want to invest in the firm which has a stable performance because odds are that performance will be sustainable and it's not just a fluke in this particular year. And the third set of signals is if you're investing in a growth firms, buy firms which are investing in growth. What does that mean? It means if you're a growth firm, you should be investing in innovation. You should be investing in things like R&D and capital expenditure and advertising and so on and so forth, which is going to build your human capital, your intellectual capital, your brand capital, etc. So G-Score tries to separate firms which deserve their high valuation to firms which do not deserve their high valuation. Okay. So in my earlier paper, way back in 2005, I showed that this stuff works really well. Now the question to ask is, how has G-Score done recently? So there is this website called Validia, validia.com, which this is their implementation, long only implementation of G-Score. That is, they have not done any long short, there's no shorting and stuff. They have just identified every year the stocks which do the top in the G-Score and held them for 1 year and done it on an annual basis. As you guys can see, the G-Score strategy has outperformed the stock market by a massive amount. Well, the stock market earned around 400%. This strategy earned around 1500% over this 12 or 14-year period. And lest any of you ask me, these are unfortunately not my returns, right? Because I was busy writing other papers and stuff. But maybe I should have been running a hedge fund instead, but unfortunately I didn't. But if any of you want to start a hedge fund, you know whom to call. Okay. All right. Okay, so can you apply this G-Score strategy to AI? And that's what I'm going to be spending the last 5 minutes of my talk on. Okay. Can you tailor this G-Score to AI? Can you identify the sustainable investors and adopters of AI? And the one line I'd like to use is separate companies which are in AI for the value of AI from the companies which are in AI for the valuation of AI. Okay, so people who are doing AI for the right reasons, not for the wrong reasons. Okay, firms which are creating sustainable, meaningful competitive advantage from their investments in AI. Of course, this approach is not going to be easy. One of the biggest problem is investment does not equal success. Just because you spend $1 billion doesn't mean you've created $1 billion or more of value. You could just have blown it. Okay. Often it's also first mover advantage does not work. If you think about many different spaces, right? The first spreadsheet was VisiCalc, a company you've never heard of. Everybody uses Excel now, but there was also Lotus 123, another company which fell by the wayside, right? I'm guessing if I have a show of hands in the room, how many of you in this room have owned a BlackBerry? Okay. How many of you in this room own a BlackBerry? Okay. Still, wow, amazing. Go Canada. All right. All right. So first mover advantage doesn't always work. The other problem is financial statement numbers are bundled. You're not going to get disclosure on how much a company is spending on AI specific investments. So it's going to be a little challenging. But nonetheless, we need to use some innovative approaches to measure innovation, especially investments in human capital as well. And here are some thoughts on how you can do this. Now, one thing I must mention is everything I'm saying so far is has been based on past research. Everything I'm going to say so far is going to be conjectural, right? Okay. Success in AI is going to possibly depend on two factors. One of them is financial investment in innovation and investment in human capital. So some of the G-Score indicators already capture some of this. So if you're investing in R&D and CapEx, a firm which invests in R&D and CapEx just needs to redirect its R&D and CapEx investments towards AI. Okay, investment in human capital is going to be a little more challenging, but some researchers have actually gone ahead trying to do it. Even though disclosure is limited, you rely on the voluntary disclosure, you'll have to use other information. So for example, let's say you have two companies, both of them say that AI is our future, we are going to invest in AI. And we, in fact, have changed our company's name from something.com to something.ai. All right. How do you distinguish between these two companies? The simple thing is look at what these companies are actually doing. If there's one company which is putting job postings saying, I want to hire AI engineers, you can see the job postings and stuff as a measure of their decision to change their business pattern, to go after human capital. That's basically what will make sense. So there's a paper by this bunch of people, including Darren Acemoglu, who won the Nobel Prize in Economics last year, which essentially tries to measure AI and jobs evidence from online vacancies. You can also look at the extent of AI disclosure in financial statements. In fact, it's funny thing is you can use AI to measure the extent of AI disclosure in financial statements. That's something that you might have to do. Okay. Now, one thing I want to do is how do you measure the value of AI? I'm going to take a very simple financial statement based approach. Okay. For AI to be valuable, it has to generate value in the medium term. Okay. If someone says it's going to generate value in the long term, please remember that in the long term, we are all dead. Okay. So it's just hype. So how is that value going to be generated? It has to come from incremental profits. And incremental profits have to come from incremental revenues. So AI helps you sell more or sell new products because you're able to do it with AI. It helps in direct reduction of costs. It helps in indirect reduction of costs, so you can reduce your administrative expenses, or it comes from other things like you're getting an R&D tax credit or some other investment credit for your investments in AI. Okay, so look at your financial indicators. So you have companies which are investing in AI, it has to translate into one of these things. If it's not, that investment is a waste. So again, like I said, these are research ideas. I haven't actually tested them. But now I'm going to talk one slide about AI in the Indian context. So India is investing heavily in AI, and by some measures, the government has allocated around 7,000 crores per year under the Digital India initiative, right? AI adoption is supposed to add $500 billion to the GDP by 2025. Many of the AI tools worldwide are available in India. But the question to ask is, are they directly transferable to the Indian context? AI models which have been trained using largely North American data, can you just apply them in a plug-and-play situation in the Indian context? The answer is, I don't know. The training data, cultural bias and appropriateness of the data. Will the cost-benefit trade-offs be the same here? Can we afford to go after a technology which might result in 40% reduction in the workforce in a country where we already have rising youth unemployment, okay? Where we don't have the same social security network that some of the richer Western countries might have? Does India have the capability to reskill or upskill its workforce in the magnitude required if AI turns out to be as big as it's supposed to be? Lastly, the environmental impact. We are having environmental issues as is. Can we afford to have something which adds 30, 40, 50% to our energy requirements if that's what it turns out to be? Okay, some concluding thoughts. AI ML is undoubtedly going to be transformative. Transformation will have pros and cons. There will be winners and losers. Standing by and watching is not an option, okay? So if you stand by and watch and you continue doing whatever you're doing as an organization, you're going to be like the stagecoach manufacturer which was focusing on making the best stagecoach while everybody was moving into the IC engine. Or you're somebody who's making IC engines when everybody's moving on to EVs, right? Yet, one has to be wary of irrational exuberance, okay? As a developer of AI, as a user of AI, and as an investor in AI. Okay, I don't have all the answers, but I hope I've encouraged you to ask the right questions. Okay, so that's all I have. I have a few acknowledgements to make. So I would like to thank Sid. Okay, I was actually, I have to actually both thank Sid and blame Sid. For the last 1 month, I have been drinking, sleeping AI. Okay, the amount of stuff I've read. But hopefully, like, Sid and I hope, hopefully this is going to lead to some very interesting research projects on our behalf. Sid is like my close friend, PhD classmate, former colleague, co-author, tennis adversary / partner, all of those things, right? So firstly, for inviting me and encouraging me to tailor this presentation towards the AI ML space, which is what I ended up doing. I also have to thank 2 of my classmates from IIM Ahmedabad, Pankaj Seth and Nimish Sanghi. So these are both absolute subject matter experts in the AI ML field. Nimish on the technology side, Pankaj on the sort of marketing and branding side. So these guys led me to a lot of resources which helped me read up about AI in general, but also in the Indian space. Okay, and I read a couple of books. Both of them are written by 3 colleagues of mine from the University of Toronto. The first one is called Prediction Machines. The second one is called Power and Prediction. by Ajay Agarwal, Joshua Gans, and Avi Goldfarb. I think these are, if you want to get an early introduction or just a simple practitioner introduction to how transformative AI is going to be, and some discussions of the costs and benefits, I think these two books are great starting points. Okay, so I'll end here. Thank you very much, and I'll be happy to take any questions.
First of all, Partha, thank you very much for that thoughtful discussion and overview of AI. I do have a few questions from the audience to start the discussion with. The first one, and I think this is related to some of your own research in terms of applying AI-based techniques in capital markets. Are there specific financial indicators or market trends that AI seems to struggle with interpreting appropriately? In other words, does it have a hard time with certain types of trends, certain types of patterns, and certain types of metrics? And what are your thoughts on how to navigate such limitations?
So I think this is one of the cases where you have to make a choice as to whether AI is a predictive tool or a judgment tool. And I am of the view that, especially in financial markets, right, it should be AI assisted, not AI led. So what it means is, let's say you're somebody who's looking at firms to invest in. Okay, you can use AI to generate those reports to identify the 20 firms which are potential buys or potential sells. But don't make the investment decision based on what AI says. Use AI as a screening tool, okay? Because you will notice that AI can sound in. So firstly, AI is like the person who can come up with a really nice PowerPoint presentation which sounds really impressive but has zero content. Hopefully, my presentation wasn't one of those today. And full disclosure, I did not use AI at all. That's why my presentation was incredibly low tech. Okay, but so I think if you use AI as a screening tool, but do all the judgment stuff yourself, at least given the current state of the art of the AI, I think that would be the right thing to do.
Can AI-driven models lead to increased market volatility due to over-reliance of algorithms and herd behaviors?
So this is you're talking about like automated trading because of AI. Absolutely, it could happen, right? And this was happening even pre-AI. You didn't need AI for algorithmic trading. Algorithmic trading was like, they claim it was responsible for a lot of excess volatility and so on and so forth, right? So it can, but it's not as though this is happening because of AI. This has been predating the large-scale adoption of AI as well. So I think it's certainly possible, right? Exactly, like FOMO, fool's rush in, wisdom / mob-like behavior has been there for ages.
Right. So now moving on to areas that AI might have the biggest impacts in transforming. You've covered many different functions. You've covered many different sectors. Which of these do you think will probably be the most, to benefit? Which of these might be impacted most adversely?
Okay, so I'm just conjecturing here, okay? So I think any sector which is struggling right now because of lack of resources, whether it's financial resources or human resources, AI has the power of being transformative. So just think about healthcare, okay? I'll give you the Canadian example. You had people, Canada is a wonderful country. I love Canada. I'm very happy to be there. But our healthcare system has really taken a beating post-COVID, okay? And part of it is because there's just a lack of human capital. Doctors can only see so many patients, okay? Or radiologists or whatever can only look at so many CT scans or whatever, X-ray reports or whatever. But if AI can help increase the throughput of the existing human capital that you have, maybe some of those backlogs can be reduced. Okay, so I think and similarly, it could be the delivery of government services, and so any area where there's just lack of capital, and especially human capital, right? AI can help. The areas which are going to be the most adversely affected are the most routinized tasks. So if you're an accountant, right, or if you're a bookkeeper, not an accountant, like I'm not talking about the judgmental area. I think the audit side of it is still okay, but the routine bookkeeping side, or if you're a paralegal, or those kinds of things are going to be very adversely affected. Now, Indian IT majors, right, they have a real problem on their hands right now because AI can generate a lot of the routine code. So if you are anything where you are at the bottom of the value chain, you better start worrying. You better start moving up the value chain. But same thing happened in manufacturing as well, right? You better be moving up the value chain, otherwise you're going to lose your job to a lower cost jurisdiction. Now here, the lowest cost jurisdiction is not a physical place. It's a virtual space called AI. And that's something you need to worry about.
Right? And what do you see as the most significant ethical or regulatory challenges that you foresee us facing as AI becomes more widespread in its adoption?
Okay, so I have hardly covered the ethical aspect of AI because you could have a full hour discussion on the ethical aspects of AI. So for example, I'll give you an example. People have this thing of, let's say you're training a Tesla and an accident is unavoidable. You have to hit one of two people, right? There is this young lady with a pram on one side crossing the road, and there's an old gentleman. You got to make decisions. Tell the AI, you know what, hit the old guy. He's lived a good life. It's okay. You got to let this. So my point is, AI is going to have to make horrible decisions like this, right? So I think the ethical aspects of AI are incredible, are going to be incredibly profound. Also, like we just think about, we are truly entering a brave new world, not just with AI. You have the election of Trump, and you have people like Elon Musk, and you have like Mark Zuckerberg just said yesterday that we're going to stop fact checking, right? So you're going to have a profusion of fake information, and all that fake information is going to be feeding into the AI models of tomorrow. Just think about what that means. I mean, the mind boggles in terms of how bad outcomes can be.
Now I'm really going to ask you to speculate. What would you think, areas that you would say regulators really should be focusing on first as we think about the proliferation of AI?
So this is, again, I'm not an expert in this, but if you listen to people like Jeff Hinton and stuff, people talk about this thing called AGI, artificial general intelligence, right? So if ever in any sphere you feel as though AI is exceeding human capacity on the judgment side, you really have to worry about, is that the road we want to go down? Okay, so I remember, for those of you who watched the movie The Matrix in 1999, it just seemed like an amazing science fiction 350 years from now with a very 0.01 probability of happening. If you talk to some people, they think it's going to be 2050 with a 10% probability of it happening, right? So if very often something like that's going to happen, it's something you need to think about. And here's going to be the challenges, right? You in the US or us in Canada or the EU might decide to outlaw something, but by outlawing that thing, other jurisdictions which have more lax regulatory environment, China might say, forget it, we will do it. And you're going to fall behind on the technology side because of your ethical and AI considerations. So falling behind on the technology side can also have ethical considerations, right? Because you're second best and you're left yourself vulnerable in this arms race for better AI. So that's something you need to think about as well from an ethical perspective, right?
All right. So moving on to sort of more social impact questions. How do you see AI affecting basically income disparities and income inequalities?
So I think AI has the potential of both helping and hindering on this dimension. So for example, one of the slides I had said that AI can help weaker people get up to speed because AI can give them the tools they didn't have otherwise. Okay? But on the other hand, access to AI, access to the computing power which AI demands, access to paid versions of AI is not something you can take for granted. So maybe a public policy consideration to think about is, if there is paid AI, should you consider subsidizing that for rank and file? So for example, if you're a university, should you get a subscription of, like say, the paid version of ChatGPT so that all students can use it, as opposed to some students paying like $40 a month or whatever and getting access to the full version of ChatGPT, which is going to, it's not to help them cheat, it's going to help them give the baseline which AI does so they can work on that and produce amazing work, which is going to give them an A+ while their other peers who don't have the financial wherewithal get left behind. So I think those kinds of things can worsen income inequality, right? So it could go either way. So it's in fact, it could go either way at the same time. In some dimensions, it can have a sort of democratizing effect. Like for example, if we look at the example of chess, AI has made chess equal for everyone. right? But in some dimensions, it can like make things like, hasten the digital divide. It already exists right now.
I'm thinking a little bit more about how organizations and businesses should be thinking through the process of adopting and responding to AI, right? What do you see as sort of some of the challenges and pitfalls for organizations that are, wrestling with, facing the challenges related to AI?
Okay, I'm going to start with a humorous anecdote, which has nothing to do with AI. Okay, so in 1992, when I graduated from IMA, this was around the time of the Harshad Mehta scam. Okay, if you look at the Harshad Mehta scam, all the banks which were involved in the Harshad Mehta scam were American banks, Citibank, Bank of America, and all. I mean, leaving out the Indian banks which were involved, none of the British banks, Standard Chartered and Grindlays, none of them were involved. The reason is, by the time they learned about the opportunity, the number of approval processes and all that stuff, the scam disappeared. So like similarly, like somebody said, like, why will India never have a coup in the army, unlike Pakistan? Because if somebody wants to have the coup in the army, they'll send an application in triplicate to the Ministry of External Affairs, say, we want permission to have a coup, and then there's some undersecretary will say denied, and the army will say, okay, and go back to its barracks. Okay, so something like that, like, that's basically what it's going to be. So,
Flattening organizations, those types of things will accelerate.
So
adoption.
organizations
but-
basically have to decide why they're doing the AI. I think that's the most important thing. So you should be doing AI because you see the value proposition. Okay, don't get taken in by really nice, fancy presentations, with due respect to those of you in the room from Deloitte and Gartner and BCG and all those kinds of things, right? Because these, similarly, I'll give you an example, right? M&A. Most M&A destroy value. The only people who gain value from M&A are lawyers and investment bankers and the acquired company, right? For the acquiring company, because you'll see these fancy presentations about synergy and like revenue synergy and cost synergy, and in reality, none of it pans out. So there's going to be a lot of disappointment in AI as well. So my point is if somebody is selling you a bill of goods, right? Make sure there's something in there. Maybe treads gently first. Try out small aspects where the use case for AI is absolutely clear. Where get over the low-hanging fruit first, right? Before you get into some of the more. And the second thing is, do not underestimate the challenges of implementation. Like telling somebody, every strategic report can be boiled down into increase sales, reduce costs, motivate your employees. Unfortunately, doing it is the more difficult part, right? So, I mean, I'm not trying to go after any of these organizations. I actually had job offers from many of them, while I chose an academic career. But the point I'm trying to make is, make sure that you understand why you're doing this. Don't do it because the guy next door is doing it. Okay?
So last set of questions deal more with sort of what types of HR investments do you see organizations needing to make in order to adapt to sort of the AI revolution? And what types of things do you think they need to be doing culturally to create the type of culture that fosters innovation and advancement and adoption?
So on the HR side, one is the direct HR function. The direct HR function is going to be affected by AI, because you'll use AI for things like just dealing, even forget HR function, as a college, right? When you get large volume of applications, you will find it much more efficient for AI to do some of that early sorting. I'm sure you have, right? I mean, all organizations, I mean, we do it at Toronto as well. So organizations will have to do that for things like, talent acquisition. You can use it for things like talent retention and stuff. Being completely mindful of the fact that you have to worry about things like biases and all those kinds of things. Gender biases in India, it could be caste biases, religion biases, all these things which can come out either explicitly or implicitly through the AI, right? So you got to be extremely careful about that. But the second aspect is organizations spend a lot of time and resources on training. And I think some of that training budget has to be towards training employees towards the use of AI. And this is going to be a bit of a challenge because you'll have two kinds of employees. You may have many, but at least two kinds of employees you can think of. One employee is going to be somebody who says, yes, I need to do this. I need to do this because it's going to help me be more productive. It's also going to help me be more marketable for myself for future employment. And you're going to have the second employee who's going to say, why the hell should I learn something which is going to replace me? What's in it for me? Like, I'm just going to hasten my own demise. So that's a challenge that organizations and the HR side of organizations have to worry about.
That's everything I have from the audience, unless there's more. Or how are we doing on time? Okay, all right. So I think that is also our time. So it's perfect timing.
Okay.
So I guess, do we turn over Suresh or?
Thank you. Should I?
Thank you once again, sir, for that very insightful address. To honor your contributions and participation in this lecture, we now present you with the Distinguished Thought Leader Award and a citation from Great Lakes. May I request Dr. Balachandran and Mr. Lakam Raju to please come on stage.
So, Partha, in recognition for your valuable contribution to helping us all think through this incredibly important and timely topic and area, we'd like to present you with this plaque. Okay, the plaque has an inscription on it, and I'll read the inscription word for word. Great Lakes Institute of Management is honored to present the Distinguished Thought Leader Award to Dr. Partha Mohanram in recognition of his profound impact in the fields of accounting and finance. His visionary research, active mentorship, and unwavering commitment to knowledge creation and dissemination have shaped countless minds, inspired innovation, and left an enduring legacy in the academic and professional community. With sincere gratitude, Great Lakes Institute of Management.
On behalf of the Madras Management Association, may I also request Mr. Mahalingam and Group Captain Vijay Kumar, Executive Director, to come to stage for the felicitation. Ladies and gentlemen, as we draw to the close to this event, I invite our very dynamic Dean, Dr. Suresh Ramanathan, to deliver the concluding remarks and the vote of thanks. Ladies and gentlemen, a big hand.
Good evening, everybody. And, it was a truly riveting inaugural lecture delivered by Dr. Mohanram. I think all of us were completely fascinated. And as I was reflecting upon the powers of AI and the perils thereof, I was reminded of a piece of research that I had the occasion to look at. And what it spoke about was that the future is going to be basically determined by whether AI is actually going to not just replace the logical side of thinking, but also the creative side of thinking. And so far, at least the evidence seems to be that when it comes to innovation, AI is extremely good with the logical side of things. But still, when it comes to new ideas or innovation, there is still some room to grow for AI. So as long as uh, you know, as a pivot to the role of education and the role of what we do in terms of imparting high-level skills to people, perhaps there is an opportunity out here to start thinking about how do we train people to be more creative rather than simply to think about being analytical problem solvers, which is, I think, the area where probably AI will eventually take over fairly well. And that basically talks about this idea of holistic thinking and so on and so forth. But I think these thoughts and what Professor Mohanram shared are extremely valuable, because I could see what he talked about would resonate with everybody in this audience. I think we all come from very, very different backgrounds, different sectors of industry. I think what he discussed was a very broad-based impact of AI on every single sector of the economy. And I think in that sense, it is empowering to know what it can do, but equally, I think it also causes us to question some of the assumptions that we make about our business, and to say that, yeah, as he rightly pointed out, the stagecoach example, which is that, yeah, we can be complacent. We can tell ourselves that, yeah, this is not going to affect us, or we have always done things this way and nothing is, this is not, AI is not going to impact us in any way. But sooner or later it is going to, and we better be ready for that, right? And I think that came through very profoundly in what Professor Mohanram shared. So I want to thank Partha for your very insightful talk. I want to thank the board at Great Lakes for having put this together. I want to thank my friend Mali and Group Captain Vijay Kumar at MMA for having kindly agreed to host this event for us, and to be able to bring such a wonderful audience. I'm told that there were 910 people who logged in online to watch this lecture. So kudos, and amazing. In fact, quite a few of the questions that you answered apparently came from online viewers. So I think it just speaks to the level of engagement and the level of involvement that everybody had in what Professor Mohanram had to say. So thank you all for coming. And we look forward to engaging with MMA and to continue this association on many such lectures. This is the inaugural lecture, of course, but there will be many, many more, and I look forward to also being very much a part of these lectures. So thank you so much.
As Professor Bala would often remind us, the world is full of challenges, but it's also full of opportunities to lead with heart and impact. Let's take his legacy forward in our lives and work. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us this evening. And we have high tea for you on this side of the room. Please enjoy the rest of the evening. Thank you.